Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Imperfect Person podcast. I am your host, Tori Aletto, and today with me is my husband of almost 7 years. We just figured that out. And our topic is going to maybe be a series, if it resonates with you guys, called Imperfect Marriage. So we're going to start off with, do you mind if I go back and I know some people who follow me on Instagram and my therapist, by the way, kind of have some sense of our story because I shared it in bits and pieces, but can I go back and just give a little glimpse of it?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. All right. We met 13 years ago, around 11. No, we tried to establish that around maybe 11 years ago, actually. And we started dating very slowly. And by the time, why are you laughing at that?
That was my fault.
Why is that your fault? Let's bring you in. Share. Why was that your fault?
I think part of my style back then was to take time with dating.
Oh, style. What does that mean?
So, sort of how I dated was just
Slow?
very slow in the beginning. Yeah. Very scared to get serious early on.
Okay. So we took it very slow. All right. We did take it very slow. And I allowed it because I was interested in getting to know you. Right.
I hope so. Yeah. I think.
No, but I think you can take that personally, oh, he's going slow because he's not interested in me. For me, it was, oh, he's going slow. Okay. It's my choice whether or not I want to go slow or not. And obviously I did. Yeah. Okay. So we went slow, but then we obviously ended up together in a relationship. And then very quickly our issues surfaced. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So we entered in what I call as a therapist. By the way, my husband is not a therapist. He works around numbers. And I think that's important to share because I notice a lot of podcasts or people who do work together are both therapists. And the reason why I wanted my husband on is because he is a regular dude. Right? Yeah. Okay. So we entered into what I call the power struggle stage, which is when sort of that honeymoon dopamine feelings go away and our issues show up. So what were your issues?
Oh, okay.
Or let's talk about the dynamic between us because we both obviously struggled.
I think I was the classic stonewaller / shutdowner / runawayer.
Yeah.
And you were she's a professional
pursuer.
Talk about her, conversation about everything. And I was not ready. I was not equipped nor ready. So it was, I feel like not only was I shutting down, but I was almost doubling down to shutting down because of how equipped you were to deal with situations.
So something hard would come up and it would cause, let's say, somewhat anxiety in both of us. And my response would be to, let's talk about it. Let's deal with this. Let's go there. And your response initially would be to shut down. Right. And then what would happen is the shutdown would cause me to pursue you more for conversation, for, whatever, just to figure things out, manage it. And you would double down and shut down even more.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I've dated other people before, believe it or not, who have been shut down. I know it's weird, but I have, but you were the most shut down I've ever dated. Did you know that?
No, not
quite.
Not quite.
Okay. Well, you were.
Okay.
I imagine I was the most, intense.
The most, yeah.
Was that the right word to describe me?
It wasn't, I don't want to say it was intense. I think a lot of it was even in my own head because the fact that it's your profession, it was very intimidating. That you had a professional relationship therapist, wanting to get to the bottom of things if we had a snag. So it got scary. It got scary at times. Intense could be a way.
Well, I told you I never forget the word that you used to me. This is when we broke up. So what happened? Let's just kind of move through and I'll tell you the word, which you probably remember. This continued on and basically broke us up. It became pretty toxic. I feel like our fights became ugly. Like I would be very, intense and, like whatever it was, or even analytical. Like I just used all my tricks. And you would just eventually shut down so much. I remember you would just eventually leave.
Yeah, I would just run out.
You would leave. And then I would leave. And it was like this game. So we ended up breaking up because it got super unhealthy. But I'll never forget what you said to me when we did break up, is you had said that I was controlling. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember my initial response to that was, well, heck no, I'm not controlling, because I am calm and I am regulated and I try my best and my needs are valid. And I really wanted to prove you wrong initially. But then I sat with what you said. And what I really moved away from was the word controlling, which is pretty yucky. No one wants to be considered controlling. And I sat with what your experience might have been. And I realized my energy, which I now realize is really more codependent. I was really focused on you. My codependent energy felt controlling and it kind of dominated some of the space in the relationship. So what was your reflection like when we broke up? Based on the many things I'm sure I said to you, but that one was the one that stuck out for me. Did you have what was that like for you?
I think around that time I had started therapy on my own.
Yeah.
And I think the journey sort of started into trying to work through this stuff and trying to, look at my part in these situations, which was still, I was at like a 2% out of 10 in terms of like trying to be self-aware in those situations. So it was early, but I think we almost really needed that time away. We had gotten into such a bad, not to take blame away from myself in that situation, but we needed the time apart with how down bad we got.
Yeah, no, that pattern overtook us.
Right. It was bad.
But let's just be clear though, when we broke up, we didn't think we were getting back together. I didn't think we were getting back together.
No,
I don't think we had that intention. We thought like, ooh, this is not, we're not a good match. We're not a good match.
Much. Yeah.
So we each kind of separated and did our own work. But what I think is interesting is we each separated and really reflected on what the other one brought out in us.
Right. I remember telling people the story as to why we broke up. And it was always this, you were this raging, this super controlling person who tried to, have the answer to everything and have me act in a certain way. And it was super focused on you. And, I remember
that was your story.
Yeah. I remember telling the story and it was almost like, I feel like I just memorized it at that point. It wasn't even, I don't even know if it was coherent. It clearly wasn't telling the story as to what was happening.
Well, my story, want to know my story? My story was just like you were just emotionally unavailable, shut down, impossible to be close to, So we had these stories. But I think what I think is important is at some point we each moved away from being stuck in that story and really instead paid attention to what the other was revealing in us. And for me, that was really looking at this like codependent pattern of me overly always focused on someone else, fixing someone else, helping someone else, or really pushing someone else, because your inability to see me brought out all of my own wounds, all of my old invisible wounds, I call them. So I'm imagining, because I know how this ended, here we are, that you did the same work, because we took some of this and really kind of examined ourselves. So you did, I want you to be close to this mic a little bit. See, there she is. She's controlling. So, I'm just kidding. I want you to, I'm curious, like, how did you go from being shut down to being willing to self-reflect and see yourself? Like, how did you move away from the story of Tori's controlling to what's going on in me? Like, how did you do that? Because that's a big deal.
How did I do it?
Yeah.
The how is tough. I think it was I think being able to sit with like what our last couple fights were while we'd broken up,
Okay.
and really trying to dig into the defensiveness, which was like, I think that was at the core of like our issue or my issue. It was almost like everything became a competition. Every argument became who would win.
Hmm.
And if I could just not share, if I could just not speak, and I could leave and leave you struggling by leaving, I win.
Hmm.
So this is kind of, that was where I was. So to unwind that, I'm not sure. I mean,
Can I stop? That's so interesting because you've never quite said it that way before. And I feel like that's really interesting when I think of just like you have like your competitiveness in general and how that might show up in a relationship. Like the goal there for you is to win, not to connect.
yeah, don't lose the fight.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Don't, showing emotion was, a big no,
Right.
which I'm not sure why that, I mean, I guess childhood
Well, now you know.
things
Yeah,
come
you were
around.
exploring some of that
Yeah.
stuff.
So, yeah, it was just sort of, really digging in and standing my ground. As we fought more, I would get tougher around it. It
Yeah.
got worse. The time away, you had to start, I had to start realizing, that I was part of the situation at that point.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that answered how, but I think I was able to pinpoint an area that I was really sort of lacking in, and that was that defensiveness, that immediate reactiveness to it. It wasn't even fights though. Even when even when you still ask me something like, "Are you in a bad mood?" My reaction can be always to like,
Fight me. Oh, you're talking about is now
yeah,
currently?
now even it's not
Yeah.
gone. It's something that's constantly being worked on, but it was such like a weak point of mine that I think had to
Well, I
we had
think
to
what
start
you're
working on.
saying is, and maybe this is for another future episode, is that these patterns still occur. They just come up much less frequently and they maybe get to like a 2 or 3.
They're
Whereas
lighter. Yeah, it's lighter.
when we were in a bad place, they dominated our entire connection. They just took over our relationship. So when we broke up, well, I can say I think I texted you Happy New Year's. It was like almost a year later.
Almost a year. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said Happy New Year's. And somehow then we ended up hanging out. And I remember thinking, this could end really badly. I can get really, really, really hurt. But something about it made me want to see you again. And not wanting to tell anyone that I was seeing you again because you were known as the toxic ex.
Yeah. We had to hide it for a bit.
Yeah. And by the way, if you have any, there was nothing, when I say toxic, it's just really the patterns that developed that were really unhealthy. If this ever borders into like abuse or anything like that, I would not recommend following any instincts or any gut instinct to see someone. But for us, it was really just communication breakdown and how, and disconnect. But so we started hanging out again, and I noticed something very different in you, and things just played out very differently because we were both really in our own skin, in our own self the second time around. Um, I don't know, anything you want to say about the reconnect?
It was so much lighter, right? Every everything like towards the end of our breakup, and this was I remember this was one of my main things was um every everything had so much weight to it,
Yeah,
right?
I was
Every
like,
fight was
we
like
lost our playfulness,
the
our fun. It was like heavy. That's what you mean?
the everything was on the line. If we had got into
Yeah,
like a bad fight, it was like, this is it. If this goes wrong, the relationship's over. So
I used to do that.
it was so everything was so stressful. We just kind of we had a serious restart.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying when you say lighter is we just created more safety, that we can have hard conversations or even moments where we were disconnected and it wouldn't threaten the relationship, that we knew we would come back to each other. But we built that safety because I think, one, I was regulating my anxiety. Instead of pursuing you, I was regulating that and really working to kind of self-soothe. And you would open up. You started to share and be more
Yeah.
vulnerable, and um, you go there. I didn't have to force you to do it. You showed up. So by each of us doing our part, we created a much more safer environment to manage the normal difficult things in a relationship. Would you say that's like accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
And that doesn't mean that they stop.
No.
It means that we learn how to work through them. But it was really both of us. I think that's what's important, because I think we both showed like we're each going to handle ourselves. And when I trusted you to do that and you trusted me to do that, I feel like that changed a lot for us. Right? Okay. So we also continued to always be open to go to therapy and manage, or anything else we needed to do.
Yeah.
To, it wasn't like we weren't like, oh, game over, we got this. We were like, oh, we're both willing. And that was the got this. And that's how I knew you. That's how I knew you were it for me, by the way. Did you know that?
Not specifically that,
Well,
but
there's
okay.
many reasons, but my biggest value is someone who's willing. And that's not an easy thing. And you weren't willing originally, but that was because that was your defense, right? But you became willing to look at yourself and to, and to really like create a like loving connection with me. That's continued into now. So did you think of that, or is that just me thinking those things?
Did I think of what?
You just thought I was cute. Is that why you wanted to get back together?
Well, it's
just
part of it, but I think
no, really, like it's a big undertaking to marry a marriage and family therapist. So, right? I think it's a big one. People will probably find that intimidating that you did that.
it is intimidating.
Yeah.
Surely. Yeah.
So what made you go, okay, but this is right?
Well, I think that, that was part of what I really was interested in you early on. I was super interested in the work, in your work early on.
Yeah, you were.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I remember I was like asking you so many questions about it, because it was very interesting to hear of. It's not something that you hear of often. But how can you value any sort of self-improvement without doing the tough work yourself?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big important thing to do.
Well, I also think, for us, we challenge each other in ways that ultimately didn't feel healthy, but became our biggest like growth. I think I had to tap into your emotional side. Now we have kids, and I've shared this with you personally, but like, saying I love you back then was even difficult for you. Remember?
Yes.
We had a
Like typical,
like I'd be like, I love you, and he'd just
emotional
look at me,
wall.
and I was like, oh, okay. I don't think that's good, right? But again, maybe in those moments I took it personal. But now, now I hear you with our children, and you so freely say I love you to them. It's like such a testament to your own growth. I mean, clearly that's, but I'm saying I think that we chose each other because we really kind of pushed each other to grow in most, important ways.
Definitely.
Isn't that such a big difference when you think of it?
Yeah. I mean, thinking about that now, I think I made it a point to, I mean, not to get deep into my background, but I think I made it a point to do that with our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you
when
do. It's
you say,
beautiful to
yeah.
see. It's beautiful to see when that was such a hard thing.
Mhm.
And for me too, but it comes so naturally for you now. And for on the other end of it, you have the best boundaries that I've ever known. And I suck at boundaries. Well, I'm much better at them now. but I sucked at them. I can lean codependent often, right? So you, without even knowing, sometimes I don't even know if you know these things sometimes, but you look at me sometimes and I'm like, oh, okay. I feel like I need to pay attention to myself a little bit. You have like a silent, like baby self-reflect look. You do. Like you look at me and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I should probably take it down a notch or calm down. You do. And it's like, okay, you're really good at boundaries and you help my codependence. And that is with the kids too, because that can come up all the time. I talk about it all the time. I'm a codependent in recovery, as are you, because we're together.
Yeah.
But you're better at it. You're better at boundaries, and you really make me reflect on that often. And it's vital. I mean, there's so many things that we help each other with now. But the other thing I'll say is that this pattern, like I said before, it still creeps up.
For sure.
It does. But now I'd say it creeps up as like over functioner, under functioner kind of stuff. So what do you define as that? Or instead of me defining it, do you have a definition or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, with the definitions.
Well, it doesn't have to be like serious. Like I tend to overdo it, overfunction, and you can cite us at times slack.
All right, okay, fine. Are you talking about with like home stuff, kid stuff, or like relation, or like up between us?
Probably like a little of all of that.
Okay.
I don't mean that you slack on everything. I just mean that when you get anxious, you tend to start to underfunction. When I get anxious, I overfunction. And
like
then
you try to
games.
take too many things on in one shot, or
yeah. And I get resentful, or I'm always the one like, it feels like I'm always the one doing the things.
Okay.
And you're kind of like, and then like we kind of have to manage that space.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying that might be a whole episode in itself.
I'm not sure I want to like agree with that yet. I'm not 100%
you don't agree
sure
with that?
I mean,
because
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
No. What I mean by that, because it's really much different now. But I'm saying that those are the ways that might creep up now. Is that old pursuer distancer pattern now sometimes comes up as overfunctioner, underfunctioner. But it's really pretty good because you're on it, and I think we're both kind of on it in a different way now.
We've gotten better, and we're improving. We've gotten
a lot better,
greatly.
And I think that's the key. So I think you taught me a lot about grace. There's been times where I've been reactive and I've been like, blah, 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 and you just kind of look at me, but with like grace, you give me a lot of grace. But then those eyes are like boundaries. But at the same time, I think that I also hold you accountable a lot.
For sure.
But we do it in a way where it's not like mean.
It's not humiliating.
It's not like you're an awful person or I'm an awful person. It's like, how do we function together? And we know that your typical response to anxiety is to kind of like
retreat.
And mine is to
fair.
Let me do 16 things right now. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think that we've accepted that and we kind of try to manage it versus feeling like that shouldn't exist. I think that's important for people to know that, because when I work with couples all the time, they think that their patterns are going to go away, and it causes distress when it's like, oh, he's doing it again. She's doing it again. When really it's like, oh, there it is again. How do we work through this? How do we manage that? How do I look at my end of it? Blah, blah, blah. And I know when I'm over functioning, I probably have to set boundaries. What do you do when you under function? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts on that? Because
what do I do?
When you notice, I am kind of slacking a little or underdoing it. I have to step it up.
I mean, I don't think it takes much for me to sort of snap back, but I can,
it's true.
I can, I know when I immediately start getting stressed out, my response is to start to clean. That's something that
I'll take that.
That's something that I immediately start doing. So like, if we get into an argument that'll revolve around, what, you don't take the kids out, you're not doing XYZ, I'll just like something takes over and I'll just start cleaning the kitchen. It's weird. It's weird, but it's like, in the
good to know.
In that moment, like I feel like you have to
do something.
I immediately have to start doing something physical.
To deal with the stress or to show me that you're helping?
Like maybe both.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
It's weird.
Well, I'll
I can
embrace
myself doing it.
I embrace the kitchen clean. That's for sure. Well, I feel like that topic is a whole topic. And this comes up, might I add, in a lot of areas for all couples, including us, including intimacy and alone time and sex and cleaning and balancing kids and work. And it comes up in every area, right? Look at that face.
I guess. Yeah.
It does. It does for us and for all couples, which is why I'm having you on here to talk about this. But maybe we'll go into that another episode. All right. Any last words that you want to share? What if we have any men or women out there who have a partner or someone that they're with that really struggles to open up? Anything you want to share from your perspective that could be helpful for them? Anything that I did that felt helpful instead of like invasive or?
Well, I know I say this to you all the time.
Okay.
That like, I always think of one line that you told me that really pushed me to start going to therapy.
Okay.
And I've told it to you 12.5 times.
I don't remember it. What is it?
But you were, I think I was hesitating to go early on because of, whatever stigma around therapy that exists. It's maybe not as strong as it nowadays because, mental health it's more
right.
in the know, and people are
but like 11
doing what
years
they have to
ago,
do.
not
Right.
so much.
But you said to me, anyone will pay any amount of money to go to the gym and get a trainer and improve in that facet of life. But when it comes to a therapist or mental health, people immediately stonewall. They immediately just don't want to go. They get defensive. They lose it. And for some reason that clicked with me so much because it was so true. And on top of it, you were a therapist seeing a therapist yourself.
Oh yeah.
So you also walk the walk.
Well, I think that I appreciate that. That's interesting feedback. But I also think that I notice anytime instead of being on you, I just really focus on me and like modeled it a bit, that had an impact, not in the way to like model it, but because I was genuinely doing it. And it was like, oh, we're both kind of going for it.
So that's a huge thing for me. I think still, I think it's something that still sort of resonates. Like people will go to lengths to improve in any other facet, but
mental health, they think like, I got this on my own.
Not right. I mean, not people watching this, but a lot of people will struggle to end up going when I think it's imperative. You just have to. I think you just have to. Yeah.
Well, you didn't 11 years ago.
I didn't.
But now you value it, which is huge. It's huge. It's for both of us because we both do our own work. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate. Were you nervous? How did you feel?
Nervous, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I appreciate you because I'm maybe more used to doing this stuff now. So thank you for being here. I think if this episode resonates with people, maybe you can come back and we can talk about more current things and just in an honest way, how to maneuver like parenthood, early things, sex, all these different topics that I think are very challenging, but you're pretty awesome to have as a co-host.
Thanks.
So thanks for joining us. If you hadn't already, come check me out at NY Therapist on Instagram. I have my webinar Choosing You on demand right now. And I'm really excited because my new website is up and all of my webinars are actually on demand, including Ending the Power Struggle, which is all the work that actually you and I did to get back together and have a healthy relationship. So you can find that. I also have our communication one up there. And what I love about the ones that I choose to do, like the webinars that I do, they're all things most of the time that I've done or worked on by myself and with clients and in our relationship. So go check those out. Thanks for joining us. You want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.